Welcome to the last session of the day. And it's really hard doing the last session in a conference like this because we're between you and the free drinks. Also, it's interesting to do a presentation toward the end of the day. That's why I gave you lots of sugar and candy and stuff. But also the fact that we're not going to just give you a presentation because you would probably fall asleep and check out and start checking your cell phones and stuff. So this is actually going to be a workshop. We figured this would be most engaging and most involved. And you actually have to give up and give a presentation for your group. And that guy's laughing outside already. He must know what we're doing. So my name is Greg Kiefer. I'm president and CEO of Kiefer Consulting. And I have with me Doug Robbins, the famous Douglas Robbins. And he's a senior PM at Kiefer. Nobody ever calls me Gregory. I just put that on the slide just for fun. So, the workshop today is, we got 50 minutes. We're going to go for the full hour, though, because we have a lot of stuff to cover. And it's a short presentation on project readiness assessment. We're going to break into groups, 5 groups of 10 each. In this case, there'll be smaller groups of maybe 4 each, but that'll still work. We're going to have facilitate a case study discussions with the team, so you'll have assignments on the case study. You're going to read a case study, you're going to assess it, and you're going to tell us whether or not we should proceed as an organization, move forward on that specific project. You actually have to give a presentation, so you're going to get up and give a presentation. So you have to assign a spokesperson that has that outgoing personality that can represent your team well and all those other characteristics you're looking for that spokesperson. And then we'll wrap it up with a brief discussion on what we learned. If you don't know me, I've been doing this for a long time. And I've started with the CIO Academy, did tons of sessions on those, usually 2 or 3 sessions. Hey, Chi. Yeah, 2 or 3 sessions per year. I'm very competitive, and I like to win, even though there's nothing to win at this conference, but I like to have the best sessions. So we put a lot of thought and energy into doing these, and I don't like to waste your time either. Your time is valuable. So we're going to make sure that you get some value out of this topic that we're going to actually present today and go through. We have some awesome facilitators today up here, and they all kind of group together in the front. We have Kenny Moore from CDPH. He is going to represent the Fresh Air Consortium today. That's the case study. We have Chi Amodi from Fiscal, and she just launched a new website today in Fiscal for procurement, and so we're pumped about that as a vendor. And she's going to represent the city of drones, because that drones is kind of a hot topic now and stuff. But Haley Reyes, executive director at Calwin and WCDS, she's going to represent Oregon Oversight Agency. It's the OOA agency. And then Jenny Kennedy is going to, from Department of Finance, is going to represent Retire Rich Tomorrow Corporation. Versus Retire Today. And then Doug and I are going to actually talk about the Hoosier Lottery. I'm actually from Indiana, so I figured we'd pick the Hoosier Lottery and then these are all fictitious case studies, by the way, so don't try to read into them thinking they might be your agency or something. They're not. Might be kind of close, but they're not. So there's a quick advertisement, project readiness assessment. We'll get through that really quickly. Then we're going to break you into teams. And a facilitator, the facilitators here, will assist you in handing out your case study, your project assignment, and then walking through the steps to execute on that. Real quick on Kiefer, here's the advertisement. We're a California-based company. We've been here 27 years. We do a lot of really cool stuff. We just launched CHP's new website and a bunch of other websites and cool technologies. Here's the technologies we support. SharePoint site, Core Office 365. You've probably heard of quite a few of these. We do mobile development, BI, and Nintex is a really cool product we've been using lately. How was that? 3 seconds, all right. So I'm going to hand this off to Doug. He's going to talk about a few slides around why we do the assessment, why it's important to make this part of your project. We do it on every single project we actually deliver. So.
You got to do the slides because I walk around.
Oh, okay, good. There's a clicker. I can do, dude, man, delegate, project manager, come on.
Good afternoon. Just want to do real brief kind of a preamble before you guys break into groups. The whole concept and really the takeaway for today is to discuss a portion of risk management and how risk, you all do projects, we all do projects. Risks come up throughout every project. The big thing is knowing risks, identifying risks, going through all the process, and PMBOK has a whole process of going through risk management. I'm sure a lot of you have processes. But one of the things that I've always discovered is you go through that, and it's never the risks that you identify that cause the problems. It's the ones you don't identify. And so one of the things, Greg, if you go to the next slide. I kind of, as a PM, had an epiphany a while back. I've been doing project management for a long time, and when I really started looking at success and how projects succeeded and which ones had problems, it kind of came to me that I started noticing a trend that if there were any significant problems with a project, you can almost always track it all the way back to initiation. That there were things that happened in terms of project readiness, both of the organization, maybe of the RFP and the requirements and some disconnect, change in personnel of people who were the driving forces of the project, changes on the vendor side of resourcing and scheduling and stuff. And I kept figuring out all these things had this root association with things that should have been discussed, identified, reviewed, tried to bubble up during that initiation, that initial project readiness, where be it an internal team or be it you have an external consultant coming in, some way to identify, are we ready? Are all the ducks lined up for us to do this project as originally envisioned? Has the vision changed, and accordingly, has the game plan changed based on any of those vision changes? And so, go to the next one. So, the whole purpose of today is not to give you a magic solution of how you can avoid any risks in the future of ever causing problems in your project, but a methodology, a way to consider, and you can all take this, modify it, apply it, don't apply it, do with as you want, but we have found it has been very, very helpful when I, as a project manager, go in and am first meeting and learning about an organization, and also when I'm preparing my team, what to expect, how we need to conduct ourselves, what the project is all about, what our success criteria is. Going through this process that we'll do this workshop will really help identify those risks. People ask me all the time if you could describe your PM style or what's the most important thing, and I always tell them no surprises. From the beginning of the project all the way to the end, the idea should be that nobody who's involved in the project should be surprised at the outcome. There is nothing worse than getting to final deployment, you launch it, and there's a thundering dud because whatever expectations people had, you didn't meet them, or they weren't communicated. So my whole role that I think to narrow down the focus of what a PM does, no surprises. That means open communication. That means with risks. Risks aren't bad. In fact, if you identify a risk, that's a wonderful thing because then you can work to fix it. What you can't fix is stuff you don't pay attention to and don't identify. So this initial project readiness process is just a way for you to think about when you're initiating a project on whichever side you're on, whatever role you're in the project, kind of a methodology and a concept of how you can look at things.
So you're familiar with the new PAL, Project Approval Lifecycle. At the beginning of that is an assessment, right? So it's like an organizational readiness assessment to do the project. And you know that takes about a year, maybe 2 years before you actually start the project. So what we're doing with this readiness assessment, this is actually imagine those 2 years have gone by and now you're ready to start the project. Maybe it's just an internal project and it doesn't involve a vendor. Maybe it involves a vendor, and in this case it does in this assessment. But you've signed the contract And everybody is so excited about getting started because you've waited for a year and a half, or maybe 2 years. And you're ready to rock and roll and you're ready to run. And a lot of things have changed since you actually conceptualized that project 2 years ago when you actually did that organizational readiness assessment. So this is kind of to augment that, to say now the project's ready to get started, where are we at? So take another reassessment of where you're at because things have changed, and you need to make sure before you start running that you're ready to start and that there's not a cliff that you're going to run off of. So Kenny, you have the next slide. Did you get the memo? Now this is just basically talking about, you wanted a slide here, man. This was to talk about the process of why to have this standardization stuff yesterday. I can cover it for you if you want.
I pretty much covered it in
Yeah,
a
yeah.
little spiel. So.
Well, Kenny has a really cool role. He actually is the head of the PMO. It's at public health, right? So the idea is that we were talking yesterday on the phone. It was yesterday. Oh, it was 24. No, I'm joking with you.
So I didn't catch the part about a
Yeah.
slide.
Yeah,
That's okay.
but this is like, he's in charge of all these projects, establishing the processes and stuff. So the idea was to talk about why this was one piece of that larger process that you do at the PMO.
So,
Yeah,
so what
thanks.
I pointed out in the
Sorry about
conversation yesterday, that this is it's a really great exercise. It kind of has stuff in it that's pieces of what's built into the project approval life cycle and the California PMM. And I don't really find anything particularly magic about either of those, but the important thing is that it's a process, and it's a process that's well documented and defined, and there's just so much value in everybody speaking the same language, following the same process, using the same terminology. It just makes project management go smoother when you're all talking the same language, and you have a defined process to follow. Does that
was it.
make sense? Perfect. Thank you.
So the cool thing about Kenny's job is that we don't have a PMO at Kiefer. We're a smaller company. And it's actually, as a project management office, you're trying to establish those processes. And then when you establish them, can you execute on them? And that's a tough job. It's a tough job to actually get out there and say, follow my direction as an organization. I want to improve the way you do business. And I want you to take one thing that I'm doing out of the 100 things I've produced. Maybe take this assessment. Maybe take something where you're doing a project charter. Maybe take something by here and managing your team and incorporate that and take the one step forward to actually say, we're going to do something to change the way we deliver our projects. So we have the project readiness assessment. This is divided into 7 different categories. You're going to be given an assignment in just a minute to actually read a case study and focus on one of these categories and then present your findings on that specific category. Some examples these are kind of score with points. The points are kind of not really significant, but we had to some kind of point structure for this workshop. But basically, what I want you to ask some questions is, how do we know what done looks like? Well, 2 years ago, we talked about the projects. We visualized it. We conceptualized it. We wrote our justification documentation. We actually got it approved. Are we all on the same page? Well, we've changed 3 directors since then. The project managers were involved with that are now working for a different agency, or they're working on another project. They can't take the project. In IT, we have a new CIO. You can imagine that. There's a lot of dynamics that change over that period of time. But what does done look like? Is it the same sponsor? If it's the same sponsor, what did people in procurement describe what done looked like? Well, how did they describe that in the procurement documents? When the vendor responded, what did they describe what done looked like? So you have to have that conversation. So you have to have that with the sponsors in the room, the executive directors in the room, the vendors in the room. So you say, are we on the same page? And sometimes that could be, if it's a large RFP, that could be a long discussion. Do you have a steering committee who should be involved trying to get that communications planning stuff done? Is there any resistance to change? We've been in organizations where they haven't had any change for a long time. They're really hungry for change. We've been in other organizations say we've been doing it this way forever and we don't want to change at all. So when you're going in to implement a new technology, which we do often, we deal a lot with change management. And so you have to talk about that at the beginning. Do you see any potential risks associated with changes in your organization? Are they adaptive? Are they willing to change? By the way, this is a new tablet device that's going to go out to your mobile team for assessments. Well, none of them have ever used a tablet before, and they really like the paper, and they don't want to be responsible for syncing up that device at night, and they don't want to. We have that a lot in law enforcement too, when they've already got a 40-pound belt that they wear, and you say, now you got to wear that printer that they do at the rental companies, and that only weighs 8 more ounces, and then it's like 42 pounds. And then you said, we need the charger pack for that too on the other side, and that's another 4 pounds. So there's potential resistance to change because it's already a lot of, in that case, it's a weight issue. So when was the last time you implemented a project that required organizational change? We have other ones around. When was the last time you implemented a project that was successful? Maybe in this space. When was the last time you worked on a project with a vendor that was successful? We have a bunch of other questions too. You'll see those later. And then how do you describe a successful partnership? What does that look like? When you reach a point of conflict, which I guarantee you will in your project, with the vendor or maybe with your team internally, how do you work through that? And what does that look like? How are you going to manage that conflict? You'll have the conflict, whether it's an escalated heated conversation or whether it's a low-level conflict. You have to have those discussions up front of how you want to have that conversation. Maybe you need a third party in the room, which doesn't happen very often. So there's just a lot of different things. So I'm not going to go through the rest of the sections. You can read those in the handouts you'll get in just a minute. When you're done with the assessment, you can put a score in if you want to put a score. The idea is when you do this in its entirety, because we have a short group time frame here, at the end of it you go through this assessment, and I just put these in kind of randomly, but what if you're 100%, you just get a score of 100%? Well, you're going to move forward, right? What happens if you get 80%? Well, you're probably still going to move forward. What happens if you get less than 60%, but it's mission critical for your organization? It's time to extend that conversation and make some changes, right? And change some commitments and reprioritize some stuff. So those are all things we want you to think about before you start working on stuff. So we have 5 case studies today, and we have some awesome facilitators up here in the front to talk about each one of these. So we're going to give you a packet that's going to have one of these topics in it. We're going to break into 5 different groups, and you're going to actually go through, let me get to the slide. So we have 5 teams. You have some really hard tasks you have to perform. Identify a spokesperson that's going to get up and talk about your findings. Identify a scribe. So you got 2 assignments. We're going to give you the handouts. So you have to read the case study. You got 15 minutes to do this exercise, maybe 20 since we have a smaller group. And then you're going to prepare a brief summary to talk about your topic and then your findings. And we're just going to focus it on just one section for each group since, again, we have limited time. And any other questions? You guys ready for this? It's pretty exciting to go through this. And we have some kind of funny case studies, too. We'll have the facilitators break out. They're going to help you with the topic. So they'll sit at your table with you. And we're going to hand you the packet here in just a minute.
So we've got 5 tables, and they're not absolutely evenly divided, but I don't want to make people have to move around. We'll just give a packet to each table, and if there's extra people that are sitting here to participate, go join one of the other tables.
And this, you got 15 minutes to do this, so we hope we made the topics entertaining and engaging. One's a security breach.
Eliminating an old document management system and reporting over to a new one.
I know. Okay, we're going to go ahead and let you guys speak. If you only got 2 questions answered, that's okay. Because the bar opens at 4. So we're going to go ahead and have group 1 come up, the Fresh Air Consortium. That's Kenny's group. Kenny, you guys ready? We can go backwards too. We can start with the Hoosier Lottery if you want to do that. Oh, we'll do Hoosier Lottery first. So you can stand up, or you can come up here, or you can do a dance or something, or I can play some music. Or yeah, you can stand up there. Yep.
Okay, so Hoosier Lottery. So we are developing a mobile app, and so we had a couple questions that we assessed. One was what projects were we dependent on, and we did have some internal projects at the Lottery Commission, but none of them were specifically dependent on us creating the mobile app. One of the areas where we were a little concerned is we did have some current website technology that's been out of date, and we needed to make sure that we could build a secure connectivity to the backend system. So that was something that we were looking at mitigating as a potential risk. Our IT support, so we have some existing IT staff. Unfortunately, none of them have any experience with mobile applications. So we were concerned that there could be some training needs in order for them to maintain the system. Also, we have a vendor that is offshore, so we were concerned about the potential for knowledge transfer to take over maintenance of the system after it was developed because of the issues with them being not on site. So we are looking at how to assist some of our existing staff with training so that they can help with that interface. And also we want to make sure that we have the right environment set up for testing and production and ongoing issues that could occur. So the second piece that we assessed was about people, and we talked a little bit about that experience that they've had with this type of technology. Again, not a lot of experience, but we're mitigating that with some training. Also, if they've had experience implementing this type of project, scope and size, not specific to mobile applications, but yes, we have done other IT efforts that have been successful, so we feel that this would be one that would follow that same suit. With the limited project money that we have and that we don't have folks that have a lot of experience, we were looking to mitigate their lack of skill set with potentially using some other state agency resources that have done some mobile applications to help us out, or reaching out to some of our partners in other lottery states that have done mobile applications because we know they're doing it, and learn from them as well. And then lastly, stakeholder expectations aligned. Yes, we felt like everyone is excited about having lottery on a mobile app, so there was no problem there with consumers being engaged as well as our internal stakeholders. We did have one issue because we have had some turnover most recently, but we have new executive sponsorship that is promoting the system and supporting it, so we felt that was covered as well. That's it.
Very good. So the question in all of these is, would you move forward?
And the answer to that is yes.
Yeah. Oh God. Yay. And the probability is? No, just kidding. And the next.
No, but we're not saying that.
Yeah. They didn't score all the points in all the different areas, but it has a good high probability of success. It did. The next one up is Jenny. Your group. We're going backwards.
So we've got the Retire Rich Tomorrow Corporation, and they're going to solve your financial problems and make you rich. Right. Since 2004, they've been putting together a solution for people. Now they've got a lot of investment bankers and people that have lots of years of experience, but 2004 is relatively new to get into the financial game online. And what they've had a problem with is they've had hackers get into their database and their systems, breaking in, breaching, taking customers' information. The other problem is that they're being informed of these break-ins by the public and not their own IT professionals. Now, this recent break-in that we're addressing with our emergency project happened while the information security officer and half her team are out of the country at a conference. And it's a third world country, so they have very limited access to technology, messaging systems, etc. So now it's left to the people here, left behind, to actually solve the problem. And it sounds like, based on the project, that this company has faced these problems so often recently that their policy, and we circled that here, was, where is that? But the project essentially fix the problem now and then we'll assess later. But they've been doing this over and over and over again, it sounds like, based on the history. So actually having the ISO out of the country is a good thing. Since that's where the executive making the poor decisions not to come up with a long-term solution has been, looks like, stopping it. So if the security officer stays out of country, then I say yes, it's an absolute go, get it done quick before she gets back. Let the people that actually know the IT stuff get it accomplished. Okay, so the question was, are the business processes sufficiently mature and automated? No, this is an immature business in that they do not have any great methods in place to assess any problems that come up in an emergency situation. The processes there are too fluid. And the next question was, if the project will change a business process, how do the changes get approved? Currently, it looks like it goes to an executive that may be out of touch. The executive team has a lot of financial experience, but not enough real knowledge in the information systems to make great decisions when it comes to addressing problems on an emergency basis. So, yeah. Only move forward if they stay out of country and out of the way of the IT.
That's the first time we've heard that version of that assessment. That's actually really good. Very creative group. That was great. All right, the next group is Haley with the Oregon Oversight Agency.
Actually, we have City of Drones.
Oh, City of Drones. I had it backwards. Oh,
But we can
okay, sorry.
City of Drones.
Okay. So the City of Drones project is to replace their outdated document management systems, multiple systems, with a new collaboration portal, migrate 250,000 documents off the old system, and reduce infrastructure costs by going to the cloud. The analysis by the group on this project was definitely a no-go. With a 6-month schedule, it wasn't feasible that any of the goals could be achieved in that time. We identified in the scope analysis that they weren't in alignment between the vendor and the client. There's no technical analysis has been done for it. They just simply identified that they wanted to reduce costs by going to the cloud, and that was as far as they got as far as a technological approach. There's no expectations as far as what would be delivered as far as training. SMEs would be available for the old system, as the vendor was identified as not having the tools and the experience necessary to analyze the existing system and the documents and the migration of the documents from the old system. And there's no organizational change management put in place, and as the users of the current systems by the city are all kind of have job security, as it quotes, by doing redundant processes on that. And what was the other part? The likelihood of change in the scope was high, as things seemed to be changing, and there was no clear identification of the total group of users, as it just references additional parties and the public. User groups weren't identified in that and on that sense. So I think what else?
So the cool thing about this is that you're actually adding stuff to the assessment based on your experience, which is, it's actually really good, because you're saying, well, these are the additional risks that we potentially might see. And that's the thing we want to encourage you to share with the other project managers at this conference and also after the conference. So if you take a tool like this, continue to add more ideas to that, and actually, say my experience is 5 other things that weren't incorporated into this specific section. We need to consider these because these are risks to my project. So the next one. Next up, spokesperson is. Ta-da!
Okay, so the
Oregon Oversight Agency has to implement a new enterprise portfolio management tool. There are no higher priority for this organization, as all the projects in their portfolio are high criticality. The staff are tired and the vendors are strapped. And then there are possible legislative changes as all of the missions, all of the projects are mission critical. There is potential for leadership change due to high turnover in the agency, and it has a very time-limited budget. So the decision of the committee here is no go.
Okay. Good. And have you ever been in projects where you actually said we're not going to move forward when you get to this stage? It's hard to do. I mean, as a vendor, you know, we put mega hours in to write the proposal, to go through the 1.5 year long cycle, to maybe 2 years, finally win the contract, and then we do this assessment, and we're like, wow, there's a lot of risk associated with this. And we haven't canceled one yet, but man, we've had some really open, candid discussions about addressing some of the issues and the questions we actually have highlighted in this readiness assessment. And we always add more stuff to it based on the client. But
I think sometimes it's not a matter of go or no go, it's a matter of putting mitigation strategies in place. It may be done go now, but maybe in 6 months you would have addressed, like for this project here, you would have at least addressed some of your critical, mission critical projects that you have, right? And then build morale up in order to take on additional one. So I think what I'm thinking is if they take it on now, the chances of failure is there. So it may not be a goal now, but it doesn't mean there will never be a goal.
we always ask the question is how much bandwidth do you have? And in this case, they're already working overtime. And they said, hey, we're going to throw one more project at you. Go for it. You're going to be successful. We have great confidence in you. All right, the next group. And the spokesperson is?
Our case revolved around a company called the Fresh Air Consortium. And the project was really to implement a Microsoft SharePoint intranet, extranet, intranet, enterprise content management, project management, collaboration, and communication tool that would serve as a centralized location for information sharing. We didn't get all the way through the case study, but we certainly determined, based upon their current work flow being very cyclical, 6 months of the year their project team is entirely slammed. The other 6 months of the year they're climbing out. There was a great concern about readiness, also risk, and then also the executive level senior management seems to have turned over multiple times. So there was also concern around that. One question we did try to nail down was how do we know when we are done? And the answer we came up with was when business requirements have been met, tested, and sponsor approved. And that was our definition of success. Based upon our analysis, and we didn't quite finish our huddle, but I think the concern was that we were a no-go on this project at this current particular description.
So we're kind of wrap this up. Do you guys have any other thoughts or comments, or the facilitators have any ideas or thing you want to talk about regarding the projects? Or would you guys consider implementing something like this on your projects? I mean, you come up with your own version of it. You have the full version there. If you want to email me, you can email me and I can send you an electronic copy of it and you can modify it. But we have found it absolutely invaluable to implement this on our projects. And it just opens up, you have a lot of topic areas that are predefined that we just say, this is a survey that we conduct. And people are very open to having those open, candid conversations about they want the project to be successful. And when we do get stuck on one and it's a challenge and it has a laundry list of risks, we want to talk through those before we actually start running on the project. Because Doug can attest to this, is when you get halfway through, you're going, man, I wish we would have talked about that at the beginning, that you don't have testers, or you don't have the hardware that you need to implement the new technology, or you didn't think about these other 5 topics that were relevant to knowledge transfer, like not having the people to do that with. So those are all the things that this readiness assessment was created for, again, to at least identify the risks and to mitigate those and have those discussions up front. So I hope you got some value out of this as a tool that you can add to your toolbox to continue to use as you improve your opportunities for success in your projects. And thanks for your time. Yeah. And thank you, facilitators. Thank you, facilitators.